Tupac Shakur, a legend whose music shook the world, remains an icon of hip-hop culture. His life, filled with raw passion and controversy, ended in a mysterious death in 1996, sparking endless debates. One man, a rapper named Dyson, claims to have seen the truth of Tupac's fate in a near-death experience that changed his life forever. This testimony reveals a shocking vision of hell, a divine warning, and a call to seek God's truth. Every story shared here comes from real experiences, recounted by those who faced death and returned. This account is not meant to judge or attack anyone, but to share a profound truth with an open heart. We urge you to receive this message with positivity and focus on God's love. Subscribe, share, and leave your name and city in the comments to join a community seeking eternal truth. Fame and success often blind us to the reality behind the glamour. We see what others want us to see, yet reject the truth when it's revealed, a painful irony. Dyson, raised in a Christian family in San Antonio, Texas, chased music to expose society's darkness, only to face a deeper truth. His story is a wake-up call to choose the narrow path to life. My name is Dyson, born and raised in San Antonio, Texas. My family called themselves Christians, attending church every Sunday, praying before meals. Yet their faith felt shallow, more routine than real, never seeking God's truth deeply. I followed their example, living for myself, not for Him. Growing up, I relied on logic, not faith. I dismissed ideas like Hellas myths, stories to scare kids or fuel fiery sermons. Religion seemed like a tool to control, not a path to truth. My mind craved facts, things I could see, touch, and prove. This led me to investigative journalism, a field where I could uncover lies and expose hidden realities. But the streets of San Antonio pulled me another way, toward music, toward rap. One figure stood above all, Tupac Shakur, whose raw lyrics spoke of pain, rebellion, and justice. His voice became my guide, inspiring me to pick up a mic and rap about the world's injustices. I poured my anger into music, rapping about poverty, betrayal, and forgotten souls. My songs mocked faith, calling it weak, a crutch for the naive. I laughed at those who spoke of heaven or hell, believing I was waking people up. My music gained traction, earning me a following, fueling my pride. I made documentaries, debated pastors, and scoffed at near-death stories. My fame grew, but so did strange dreams, vivid and unsettling, waking me in cold sweats. I brushed them off as stress, my mind haunted by the dark themes I explored. Yet the signs grew stronger, impossible to ignore. One hot Texas night, I sat in my apartment, typing a speech titled, "Why Near-Death Experiences Are Brain Illusions." The air felt heavy, my chest tight, as if something watched me. I tried to focus, but unease crept in, a feeling I couldn't shake. For the first time in years, I felt compelled to pray. I closed my eyes, hands on the desk, and whispered a prayer. I asked God to show me the truth, to make me understand if I was wrong. In that moment, the room shifted, and my life changed forever. The journey that followed would reveal a reality I never imagined. Strange signs had haunted me for weeks, dreams so real they left me breathless. I saw shadows moving in corners, heard whispers in quiet moments. On the streets, bad luck plagued me, a fall here, a near miss with a car there. Each incident felt like a warning, but I pushed them aside, clinging to logic. One night, unease gripped me tighter than ever. I sat alone, the weight of the air pressing down, my heart racing for no reason. Despite my skepticism, I prayed again, asking God to reveal the truth. Nothing happened, so I continued, praying and fasting for 3 days, seeking clarity. On the third day, after another prayer, I stood to get water, my mind still wrestling with doubt. As I descended the stairs, a sudden dizziness hit, my head throbbing. I stumbled, my foot slipping, and fell hard, my head striking the floor. Darkness swallowed me, and the world faded away. When awareness returned, I wasn't in my apartment. A cold, heavy presence surrounded me, not just darkness, but something alive, aware. A voice echoed in my mind, deep and clear, asking, "Dyson, do you want to know the truth?" Before I could answer, a force yanked me upward, pulling me from reality. The air grew colder, the darkness thicker, pressing against my skin. I felt weightless, yet trapped, as if falling through an endless void. The voice lingered, its question unanswered, my heart pounding with fear. I sensed I was crossing a threshold, entering a place beyond my understanding. My body trembled, the cold biting deeper, the darkness coiling like a living thing. No light, no sound, just the weight of that voice, its words echoing in my soul. I wanted to scream, to run, but I was powerless, caught in a force stronger than myself. The truth I'd sought was coming, and I wasn't ready. The void tightened, the air heavy with a stench of sulfur and decay. My mind raced, replaying my life, my mockery of faith, my pride. The voice's question burned in me, a challenge I couldn't escape. I was no longer in control, pulled toward a reality I'd denied. As I fell deeper, the cold grew unbearable, my breath short, my heart racing. The darkness wasn't empty, it watched, judged, knew me. My skepticism crumbled, replaced by dread, a sense of what awaited. I prayed again, a desperate plea, as the void carried me forward. The air pulsed, alive with malice, the stench growing stronger, stinging my eyes. I felt small, exposed, my sins flashing before me, undeniable. The voice's question echoed, a final warning before the truth unfolded. I braced myself, knowing I was about to see what I'd asked for. The descent slowed, the darkness parting slightly, revealing glimpses of a place unlike any I'd known. The air burned, the stench overwhelming, my soul heavy with fear. I landed softly, but the ground was hot, jagged, cutting into me. This was no dream. It was real, and I was in hell. The ground pulsed, alive, its heat searing my feet, the air thick with despair. Shadows moved in the distance, their forms unclear, their presence menacing. I stood frozen, the voice's question still ringing, my heart pleading for mercy. The truth was here, and it was more terrifying than I'd ever imagined. The air grew denser, the stench of rot and fire choking me, my throat raw. I saw faint figures, their movements slow, burdened by an unseen weight. The darkness whispered my name, my sins, my pride accusing me. I knew then, this was the truth I'd sought, and it would break me. The ground burned hotter, steam rising, the air heavy with screams I couldn't yet hear. My soul ached, the reality of this place sinking in, undeniable. I prayed again, a faint whisper, begging for strength, for escape. The darkness tightened, pulling me deeper, the truth unfolding in flames. The air stung, the heat pulsed, the stench clung, a constant assault. I saw more figures, their faces twisted, their cries faint but growing louder. My heart raced, my soul marked by this place, this truth. I stepped forward, the ground burning, ready to face what lay ahead. The darkness seemed to know me, its whispers personal, taunting my past. The ground shifted, coals grinding, the heat a living force, searing my flesh. I felt the weight of my choices, my rebellion, my denial of God. The truth was here, and I couldn't turn away. The air vibrated, the screams closer now, a chorus of anguish piercing my soul. The darkness parted further, revealing a cavern of fire and pain, a place of eternal justice. My prayer grew desperate, my heart pleading for mercy, for understanding. I moved deeper, the truth unfolding, my soul forever changed. The darkness wasn't just absence of light, it was alive, aware, wrapping around me like a cold, suffocating shroud. The ground beneath pulsed, hot and jagged, like the skin of a beast, its surface burning my feet with every step. Faint moans rose from below, not human but tortured, a sound that clawed at my soul. I stood frozen, the air thick with sulfur and despair, my heart pounding in terror. The cavern stretched endlessly, lit by flickering flames that cast twisted shadows on jagged walls. The heat was unbearable, not just physical but spiritual, pressing against my soul, stripping away all comfort. Screams echoed, raw and relentless, a chorus of suffering that shook the air. This was no illusion, it was a reality more vivid than life. Shadows moved, not as objects but as entities, their eyes glinting like embers watching me. The ground writhed, its heat searing deeper, steam hissing as my sweat met the burning stone. My sins flashed before me, every mockery, every denial of God, undeniable in this place. Fear gripped me, a weight I couldn't shake, my soul exposed. The air grew denser, the stench of rot and fire choking my throat, stinging my eyes. I saw figures in the distance, their forms twisted, trudging in endless lines, their steps heavy with guilt. The darkness whispered my name, my failures, my pride, each word a blade in my heart. I wanted to run, but my legs were lead, trapped in this living nightmare. A force tugged me forward, my steps reluctant, the ground cutting deeper, the heat crushing. The screams grew louder, blending with the clank of chains and a low, guttural hum, like the pulse of a dying creature. The air pulsed heavy with malice, the stench overwhelming, my breath short. I prayed a faint plea, but the darkness swallowed it, unyielding. The shadows closed in, their forms clearer now, not human but grotesque, their claws glinting in the firelight. They didn't speak, but their eyes accused, their presence a judgment on my soul. The ground burned hotter, the air thicker, my heart racing with dread. I sensed the permanence of this place, a truth I couldn't escape. The cavern's walls loomed, black and jagged, dripping with a foul ooze that hissed on the ground. The screams formed a symphony of despair, burrowing into my mind, a sound I'd never unhear. My life replayed, every choice, every sin, a mirror reflecting my path to this place. I prayed again, desperate, but the darkness tightened, pulling me deeper. The heat pulsed, alive, searing my flesh, sweat mixing with fear. The shadows moved with purpose, their laughter a grating rasp, mocking my terror. The air stung, the stench of blood and fire clinging, my throat raw, my soul heavy. This was hell, a place of justice, of consequence, of eternal pain. I saw a pit in the distance, flames roaring, souls writhing within, their cries piercing the air. The ground shifted, cold slicing deeper, the heat a constant assault, my feet burning. The shadows' eyes glowed, their claws ready, relishing the suffering around them. My heart pleaded for mercy, but this place knew none, its purpose clear. The air vibrated, the screams louder, the stench overwhelming, my senses drowning. I saw more souls, their faces contorted, their bodies broken, punished for sins I could feel in the air. The darkness was a judge, its verdict final, my soul aching under its weight. I stepped forward, the ground burning, the truth of this place sinking deep. The flames glowed brighter, steam rising, the heat a living force, crushing my spirit. The shadows circled, their laughter a blade, their eyes locked on me, waiting. My sins weighed heavy, undeniable, a chain pulling me toward the pits. I prayed once more, a whisper, begging for escape, for light in this darkness. The air grew denser, the screams blending into a wail, a constant verdict of pain. The ground pulsed, hot and alive, the stench of rotten fire choking me, my eyes burning. I felt small, exposed, my pride stripped, my soul bare before this justice. The darkness knew me, its whispers personal, a mirror of my rebellion. The cavern seemed to close in, the heat pressing closer, the screams louder, the stench clinging. I saw more pits, more souls, their torment a reflection of lives wasted, choices made in darkness. The shadows moved closer, their claws glinting, their joy a sickening contrast to the suffering. I braced myself, the ground burning, my soul marked by this place, ready to face what lay ahead. The air stung, the flames roared, the stench lingered, a cycle without end. I felt the weight of my mockery, my denial of God, my pride leading me here. The darkness was relentless, its purpose to punish, to reveal, to consume. I prayed again, my heart desperate, as the truth of hell unfolded before me. The ground burned hotter, the air heavier, the screams a constant roar, drowning my thoughts. The shadows' laughter echoed, their eyes glowing, their claws ready for me. My soul ached, the reality of this place undeniable, a warning I couldn't ignore. I moved deeper, the heat searing, the truth burning brighter than the flames. The cavern opened into a vast chamber, its walls glowing red, etched with the weight of eternal judgment. Pits of fire dotted the ground, each a cauldron of writhing souls, their screams raw, blending into a chorus of despair. The air was thick, smelling of charred flesh and sulfur, choking my breath, stinging my eyes. I stood frozen, the heat searing my skin, my heart heavy with the sight before me. In one pit, I saw Elvis Presley, his once charming voice now a scream of anguish. His body burned, flames licking his flesh, his eyes wild with regret for leading millions astray with his fame. A voice echoed, clear and holy, stating his sin, using talent to distract from God's truth. The ground pulsed, hot and jagged, cutting my feet, the stench overwhelming, my soul aching. Elvis clawed at the pit's edge, his hands blistered, his cries desperate, but the flames roared higher, unyielding. The air pulsed with malice, the heat crushing, sweat mixing with dread. His punishment was precise, a reflection of his influence, his choices, a warning I felt in my bones. The demons circling him laughed, their claws glinting, relishing his torment. Further on, Michael Jackson knelt in a pit, his face twisted, tears streaming as he whispered, "Please forgive me." His voice, once a global treasure, was broken, his body trembling under the weight of his sins. The holy voice declared his punishment for music that glorified self over God, leading souls to darkness. The air grew denser, the stench of fire and rot clinging, my throat raw. Michael's cries pierced me, his regret a mirror of the influence he'd wielded, now turned against him. The ground burned hotter, steam hissing, the heat searing my flesh, my heart racing. Demons mocked him, their eyes glowing, their laughter a grating rasp echoing off the walls. I felt his pain, a weight I carried, my own music flashing before me. The cavern widened, revealing more souls, once famous, now forgotten, their names meaningless in this place. Actors, singers, leaders, all bound in flames, their cries blending into a wail of eternal regret. The air was heavy, the stench overwhelming, the heat a constant assault, my soul burdened by their fate. I saw their lives, their choices, their refusal to repent, leading them here. Among them, one figure stood out, a man kneeling on jagged stone, bound by red-hot chains. His head was shaved, his eyes filled with a pain I knew too well. It was Tupac Shakur. My heart stopped. The rapper I'd idolized now broken, his strength gone, his voice faint. The ground burned, the air thick, the stench of charred flesh choking me, my eyes burning. Tupac's chains glowed, burning into his flesh, his cries raw as he repeated, "I love Biggie, I love Biggie." His regret for their feud was palpable, a confession of hate that fueled his music. The holy voice listed his sins, assault, violent lyrics, defiance of God, a life unrepented. The demons circled, their claws ready, their laughter mocking his pain, a sickening sight. I remembered his music, the anthems that shaped me, now a chain binding him here. The flames roared, steam rising, the heat searing, sweat stinging my eyes, my heart heavy. Tupac's eyes met mine, a flicker of recognition, then despair, his soul bare before this justice. I wanted to reach out, but the ground burned, the air pulsed, the truth undeniable. The cavern's walls loomed, dripping with black ooze, the stench clinging, my soul aching for him. His punishment was precise, each sin a link in his chains, assault, hate, rebellion, all reflected in his torment. The demons' laughter echoed, their eyes glowing, their claws glinting, relishing his suffering. I felt his regret, a warning for my own path, my own music. The air grew denser, the screams louder, the stench of fire and rot overwhelming, my throat raw. I saw other souls, their faces twisted, their bodies broken, punished for influence misused, for lives led astray. The ground shifted, coals slicing deeper, the heat unbearable, my heart racing. I prayed, a faint whisper, for mercy, for strength to warn others. Tupac's cries grew weaker, his body trembling, the chains burning brighter, his pain eternal. The holy voice lingered, urging me to see, to understand the cost of fame without faith. The air stung, the flames roared, the stench clung, a cycle without end. I stepped forward, the ground burning, my soul marked by his fate, ready to face more. The cavern seemed to close in, the heat pressing closer, the screams blending into a wail. I saw more pits, more souls, their torment a mirror of choices made in life, undeniable. The demons moved with purpose, their laughter a blade, their eyes locked on their prey. My heart pleaded for escape, but the truth held me, a lesson I couldn't unsee. The air vibrated, the ground pulsed, the stench of blood and fire choking me, my eyes burning. I felt small, exposed, my own sins flashing before me, my music, my pride. The holy voice urged me to remember, to carry this warning, to wake others. I moved deeper, the flames roaring, the truth of hell sinking into my bones. Seeing Tupac in hell shattered me, my hero reduced to a broken soul, bound by glowing chains. His voice, once bold, was faint, his words a plea. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." The air was thick, the stench of charred flesh and sulfur choking me, my heart heavy with his pain. The ground burned, steam hissing, the heat searing my feet, a constant reminder of this place. Tupac's eyes met mine, filled with regret, a mirror of the life he'd lived, the choices he'd made. He spoke, his voice trembling, confessing his sins to the flames, to God. "I knew I was wrong, but I thought I was untouchable," he said, his words cutting through the air. The demons circled, their laughter mocking, their claws glinting, relishing his torment. He confessed using music to vent pain, but also to spread anger, fueling hate in millions. The chains burned brighter, each sin a link assault, violent lyrics, defiance of God, all binding him. The air pulsed, the stench overwhelming, my throat raw, my soul aching for him. His regret was palpable, a weight I felt, my own music flashing before me. "I mocked those who warned me, called them weak," Tupac said, his voice breaking, tears streaming. He spoke of ignoring God's call, laughing at repentance, believing fame was his shield. The ground shifted, coals slicing deeper, the heat crushing, sweat stinging my eyes. The holy voice echoed, confirming his sins, a verdict etched in fire. Tupac's confession continued, his words raw. "I used God's gift to glorify myself, not him." He admitted leading fans astray, his lyrics a chain pulling them toward darkness. The air grew denser, the screams louder, the stench of fire and rot clinging, my heart racing. I saw my own songs, my own mockery, reflected in his pain, a warning I couldn't ignore. He spoke of his feud with Biggie, the hate that consumed him, now a fire burning his soul. "I love Biggie," he repeated, his voice faint, his regret a blade in his heart. The demons laughed, their eyes glowing, their claws ready, the flames roaring higher. The cavern's walls loomed, dripping with ooze, the stench overwhelming, my soul heavy with his truth. "I thought I could live two lives, one for justice, one for darkness," Tupac said, his body trembling. He confessed playing with sin, believing he'd escape its cost, now paid in eternal torment. The ground burned hotter, the air thick, the heat searing, my eyes burning with tears. His words pierced me, a mirror of my own divided heart, my own rebellion. Tupac's voice grew weaker, his chains glowing brighter, his pain a cycle without end. He begged for mercy, not for himself, but for those still living, still following his path. The air stung, the flames roared, the stench clung, a relentless assault on my senses. I prayed, a faint plea, for strength to carry his warning, to wake others. His confession ended with a cry, "I need you, God, not fame, not the world, only you." His words echoed, a desperate plea for grace, a spark of hope in this hopeless place. The demons' laughter grew louder, their claws glinting, their eyes locked on him, relishing his despair. The ground pulsed, the heat crushing, my soul marked by his truth, his pain. The air vibrated, the screams blending into a wail, the stench of fire and rot choking me. I saw other souls, their confessions faint, their regrets echoing Tupac's, a chorus of lost chances. The cavern seemed to close in, the heat pressing closer, the flames roaring, the truth undeniable. I stepped forward, the ground burning, my heart heavy, ready to see more. The holy voice lingered, urging me to remember, to share this vision, this warning. Tupac's face, once bold, was now a mask of regret, his eyes pleading for rest that never came. The air was thick, the stench overwhelming, my throat raw, my soul aching. I prayed again, for courage, for wisdom, to carry this truth to the living. The flames pulsed, the screams rang, the stench clung, a cycle without end. I felt small, exposed, my own sins flashing before me, my music, my pride, my mockery. The demons circled, their laughter a blade, their eyes glowing, watching me. The truth of hell, of Tupac's fate, burned into me, a mission forming within. The cavern twisted, revealing a chilling sight, a mound of scorched papers glowing with faint, fiery signatures. These were contracts, torn and burning, yet alive with dark energy, each bearing Tupac's name, a mark of his doom. The air was heavy, reeking of ash and sulfur, searing my skin, my heart pounding with dread. The ground burned, steam hissing, the stench of decay clinging, a warning of these documents' power. A holy voice spoke, clear and solemn. These are pacts, promises traded for fame, for power, for glory. I saw Tupac's signature, etched in fire, a seal of deals made with darkness, now chaining him to torment. The flames roared, papers crumbling, their ashes swirling like accusations, stinging my eyes. My soul ached, the reality of his choices sinking deep, a mirror of my own temptations. A figure emerged, a music producer, his face twisted, body bound in glowing chains, confessing his role. I knew the truth, but I played with fire, fearing the cost of refusal, he said, his voice trembling, raw with regret. The air pulsed with malice, the stench overwhelming, the heat crushing, sweat burning my eyes. His pain was a warning, a price paid for compromise, for guiding others to evil. The papers glowed brighter, each a tale of a soul traded, of pride breaking promises to God. I saw flashes of Tupac's life, moments of whispers offering fame, of choices made in shadows. The ground shifted, coals slicing deeper, the heat searing, my throat raw, my breath short. Demons circled, their laughter mocking, claws glinting, relishing the torment before me. The air grew denser, screams rising, the stench of fire and rot choking me, my eyes burning with tears. I saw other souls, their contracts burning, signatures binding them to eternal pain, a chorus of regret. The holy voice urged me to see, to grasp the cost of selling one's soul to darkness. My heart raced, my own dreams of fame flashing, their danger clear in this place. The producer's cries echoed, his body trembling, chains glowing, his regret of fire consuming him. He spoke of leading Tupac astray, of pushing him toward pacts that promised glory but delivered chains. The ground burned hotter, the air thick, the heat crushing, my soul heavy with his confession. I prayed silently, a plea for strength to resist such deals, to warn others of their cost. The papers crumbled further, ashes swirling, each a reminder of choices made for fleeting fame. I saw Tupac's face in my mind, his regret, his chains, his confession tied to these cursed contracts. The flames roared, steam rising, the stench clinging, a cycle without end, unyielding. The demon's laughter grew louder, eyes glowing, claws poised, watching me, judging my heart. The air vibrated, screams blending into a wail, the stench of ash and fire overwhelming, my senses drowning. I felt small, exposed, my ambitions flashing, my music a potential trap leading here. The holy voice lingered, urging me to carry this warning, to wake others to this truth. I stood frozen, the ground burning, my soul marked by these pacts, their horror undeniable. The cavern seemed to close in, the heat pressing closer, screams louder, the stench suffocating. I saw more contracts, more souls, their torment a reflection of deals forged in darkness, now eternal. The demons moved with purpose, their laughter a blade, eyes locked on their prey, relishing pain. My heart pleaded for mercy, for wisdom to avoid this fate, this truth. The air stung, flames roared, the stench lingered, a relentless assault, my throat raw. I saw the producer's life, moments of greed, of guiding artists to darkness, now his chains. The ground pulsed, coals slicing deeper, the heat searing, my soul heavy with his regret. The holy voice echoed, a call to reject such pacts, to live for God, to warn the living. The papers glowed, their ashes floating, each a story of a soul lost to pride, to promises of glory. I saw other figures, once powerful, now broken, their signatures burning, their cries faint. The air grew denser, the stench of fire and rot choking, my eyes burning with dread. The demons circled closer, their laughter mocking, their claws ready, a warning for my own path. The cavern's walls loomed, pulsing with judgment, the heat crushing, my breath short, my heart racing. I felt the weight of my own choices, my music, my pride, their potential to lead here. The holy voice urged me to remember, to share this vision, this warning, with urgency. I prayed again for courage, for strength, to resist the lure of fame, to save others. The flames pulsed, screams rang, the stench clung, a cycle without end, a verdict of pain. I saw Tupac's life again, moments of signing these pacts, of choosing darkness over light, now his torment. The ground burned hotter, steam hissing, the heat searing, my soul aching for him. The demons' laughter echoed, their eyes glowing, their joyous sickening contrast to his pain. The air vibrated with despair, the stench overwhelming, my senses overwhelmed, my mission clear. I saw other souls, their contracts burning, their regrets a chorus echoing the producer's cries. The cavern tightened, the heat closer, the screams louder, the truth undeniable. I vowed to carry this warning, to speak of these pacts, to wake those chasing fame. The ground pulsed, coals slicing deeper, the heat a living force, crushing my spirit. I felt small, my own ambitions exposed, their danger reflected in these burning papers, these chains. The holy voice lingered, a guide through this horror, a call to live differently, to warn. I stepped forward, the ground burning, my soul marked, ready to face the next truth. The air stung, flames roared, the stench lingered, a relentless assault, my eyes burning. I saw the producer's face, his regret, his chains, a mirror for those still making such deals. The demons watched, their laughter a blade, eyes locked on me, waiting for my choice. The holy voice urged me to speak, to save, to lead others to light, to God. The cavern's walls pulsed, the heat searing, the screams a symphony of pain, the stench clinging. I saw more contracts, more souls, their torment a lesson, a warning I'd carry forever. The ground burned, steam hissing, my soul heavy with this truth, this mission. I prayed once more, for boldness, for wisdom, to share this vision, to save souls from these pacts. The flames glowed brighter, the screams louder, the stench a constant assault, my heart racing. I felt Tupac's regret, his chains, his pacts, a truth etched in fire, in pain, in ashes. The cavern loomed, the heat crushing, my soul marked by this encounter, this call. I moved deeper, the ground burning, the truth of these pacts burning brighter than the flames. A shadow loomed, vast and formless, its presence heavier than the cavern's heat, its power absolute. The air vibrated, thick with malice, the stench of sulfur and decay choking my throat, stinging my eyes. The ground pulsed, hot and jagged, steam hissing as my feet burned, my heart racing in fear. This was no demon, but something greater, a force controlling the tormented souls around me. Faces flickered within the shadow, once famous, now part of its darkness, their eyes hollow, their screams faint. The air grew denser, the heat crushing, sweat mixing with dread, my soul trembling. The shadow knew me, its presence a judgment, accusing me of my sins, my pride. I stood frozen, powerless, as it moved closer, its intent clear, to claim me. The shadow's laughter was a low rumble, shaking the ground, the flames roaring higher. It reached for me, its grip cold, pulling my leg with a force that burned my soul. The air stung, the stench overwhelming, my throat raw, my heart pleading for escape. I was dragged toward a massive pit, its flames glowing red, a cauldron of torment waiting. The pit's heat was unbearable, a fire that seared not just flesh but spirit, my screams lost in its roar. The shadow hurled me in, the flames biting, my body burning, healing, then burning again, an endless cycle of agony. The stench of charred flesh and sulfur clung, my eyes burning with tears, my soul exposed. The pain was deeper than physical, a judgment for every sin, every mockery. Demons circled the pit, their claws glinting, their laughter mocking my pain, their eyes glowing with joy. The ground burned hotter, steam hissing, the heat crushing, my breath short, my heart racing. My life flashed, every choice, every rebellion, a chain pulling me deeper into the fire. I screamed, my voice raw, but the flames roared louder, drowning my cries. The shadow loomed above, its form shifting, its power a weight I couldn't escape. The air pulsed, thick with despair, the stench of fire and rot overwhelming, my soul aching. I saw other souls in the pit, their faces twisted, their cries blending with mine, a chorus of torment. The shadow's grip tightened, its laughter a blade, relishing my suffering. The flames bit deeper, my flesh blistering, the pain of fire consuming my soul, undeniable. I remembered my music, my pride, my denial of God, each a link in this chain of torment. The demons' claws raked my back, their laughter echoing, their eyes locked on me, waiting. I prayed, a faint whisper, but the fire drowned it, the shadow's power absolute. The air grew denser, the screams louder, the stench clinging, a cycle without end. I felt small, broken, my sins exposed, my soul bare before this justice. The shadow's voice boomed, accusing me of leading others astray, of mocking God's truth. The flames roared, the heat searing my heart, pleading for mercy, for escape. As the pain overwhelmed me, I saw Tupac's face, his chains, his regret, a mirror of my own fate. The ground shifted, coals slicing deeper, the heat crushing, sweat mixing with blood. The demons laughed louder, their claws ready, their eyes glowing, relishing my torment. I couldn't bear it, my soul breaking, my hope fading in the fire. In desperation, I screamed, "Jesus, please save me," my voice raw, my heart clinging to a spark of faith. I shouted again, "Jesus, please save me," the words a plea, a cry for mercy in this hopeless place. The air pulsed, the flames roared, but I screamed a third time, "Jesus, save me." A blinding light erupted, warm and pure, enveloping me, pulling me from the pit. The light was alive, its warmth healing my burns, soothing my soul, a peace beyond words. The shadow recoiled, its laughter silenced, the flames fading below, the stench clearing. The air sang, sweet and clean, the light a shield, a promise of salvation. My heart steadied, my soul lightened, saved by a mercy I didn't deserve. The light lifted me higher, the pit shrinking, its fires a distant glow, the screams faint. The shadow's power was gone, replaced by a love stronger than any darkness, a grace that rebuilt me. The air was clear, the stench of hell replaced by a faint scent of life, of hope. I prayed, a whisper of gratitude, vowing to honor this rescue, this truth. The ascent continued, the light steady, a beacon guiding me upward, away from torment. The horrors of hell lingered, but the light's promise was stronger, a call to warn others, to save them. The air vibrated, holy and calm, my soul marked by this moment, this mercy. I felt chosen, not for my worth but for His love, a mission forming within. I awoke in my apartment, my body bruised, my head throbbing from the fall, but alive. The memory of hell was vivid, Tupac's cries, the shadow's grip, the light's rescue, all etched in my soul. My heart raced, my hands trembling, but a peace settled within, a certainty of God's mercy. I knew I'd been spared, given a mission to share this truth, to warn others. The air was cool, the stench of hell gone, replaced by the faint scent of my coffee, still warm. I sat, staring at the floor, the reality of my journey sinking deep, undeniable. The holy voice echoed in my mind, urging me to remember, to speak, to live for Him. My soul was marked, my purpose clear, a call to wake the world to God's truth. I thought of the parable of the rich man and Lazarus, found in Luke 16:29, a warning of hell's reality. The rich man, in torment, begged for a messenger to warn his family, but was told they had scripture, enough to guide them. The voice urged me to share this, to show that God's word is sufficient, that hell awaits those who ignore it. My heart steadied, my mission burning brighter, a vow to live differently. The narrow gate to life, as Jesus taught, is found by few, while the wide road leads to destruction. I saw this truth in hell, in Tupac's chains, in the shadow's grip, a reality I couldn't deny. The air was calm, my soul light, but the weight of my vision drove me to act. I prayed, asking for courage, for wisdom, to carry this warning to others. The souls in hell shared a common thread, regret too late, a lesson I'd carry forever. Their cries, their chains, their torment were for choices made, for warnings ignored, for lives lived without God. The ground of my apartment felt solid, a contrast to hell's burning coals, but the memory lingered. I vowed to speak, to warn, to save others from that fate. The air vibrated with purpose, my heart steady, the holy voice's words a guide for my mission. I saw my music, once a tool of pride, now a potential light, a way to reach the lost. The horrors of hell were real, but so was God's mercy, a truth I'd share with urgency. I stood, my soul renewed, ready to live for Him, to carry His message. The parable's lesson burned in me, scripture is enough, a guide to avoid hell's flames. I thought of Tupac, his confession, his regret, a mirror for those still walking the wide road. The air was clean, the memory of hell's stench fading, but its truth remained, a warning I'd never forget. I prayed again for strength, for boldness to wake others before it's too late. The light that saved me lingered in my soul, a promise of God's love, His grace for all who repent. I saw the faces of those in hell, their cries a call to action, to speak of the narrow gate. The room was quiet, my heart steady, my purpose clear, a mission to save souls. I moved forward, the memory of hell driving me, the light of Christ guiding me. The air sang, a faint echo of heaven's peace, a reminder of what awaits the faithful. I felt small, yet chosen, my sins forgiven, my life redirected by His mercy. The horrors of hell were a lesson, a truth I'd carry to churches, streets, anywhere. My soul was marked, my mission urgent, to warn others you don't know your last chance. The ground beneath me was steady, the air calm, but the weight of my vision pushed me to act. I saw the wide road, so easy, so tempting, leading to destruction, and the narrow gate, hard but true. The Holy Voice's words echoed, a charge to live for Him, to speak His truth. I prayed once more, for courage, for a life that reflects His light, His love. Dyson's journey is a chilling wake-up call, a glimpse into hell's horrors and God's boundless mercy. He saw Tupac, once a legend, now tormented, a warning of the cost of fame without faith. This story isn't just his, it's for every soul still breathing, a call to choose the narrow path. Are you walking the right road? Share your name and city in the comments, leave a prayer, and join a community seeking God's truth. The wide road is easy, but the narrow gate leads to life. Next, we'll share another end, a vision of Hitler in hell. Have you ever thought that after death, everything just ends? No heaven, no hell, nothing. I used to believe that too, but then I died, and what I experienced on the other side changed me forever. Welcome to Eternal Bible Stories. Today, I will tell you my own story, a story of someone who was once an atheist, who did not believe in the existence of God. But after death, I saw hell, the most terrifying place a human could ever imagine, and then I was given the chance to see heaven, a place filled with light and love. What I am about to share may change the way you see life and death. If you are interested in real near-death experiences, hit the like button and subscribe right now. If you also have your own story, send it to eternalbiblestories@gmail.com. And now, listen closely, because what I am about to tell you may change the way you see life forever. My name is Brian Melvin, and many years ago I was an atheist. Not just someone who didn't believe in God, but someone who openly mocked those who had faith. I saw religion as nothing more than a crutch for the weak, a fairy tale for those afraid to face the reality of life and death. I took pride in debating believers, tearing apart their arguments with logic and reason, convinced that science had all the answers. But everything changed the day I unknowingly drank contaminated water. Not long after, I contracted cholera, and my body began shutting down at an alarming rate. The dehydration was severe, leaving me weak, delirious, and barely able to function. I felt my strength fading with every passing minute, and deep down I knew I was dying. It was a terrifying realization, but I held on to the belief that when my heart stopped, when my brain activity ceased, that would be the end. No soul, no afterlife, no judgment, just eternal nothingness. And so, as I took what I thought was my final breath, I expected complete darkness, an endless void of unconsciousness. But I was wrong. In that very moment, I was still conscious. Instead of fading into oblivion, I felt myself separating from my body, rising effortlessly into the air. I could see everything with perfect clarity. The room, the people around me, and most disturbingly, my own lifeless body lying motionless below. I should have been terrified, but I wasn't. Instead, I felt a strange sense of peace, as if I had been unshackled from a heavy burden I never even realized I was carrying. There was no pain, no fear, just an overwhelming sense of freedom. I continued to rise, moving effortlessly through the ceiling, passing beyond the physical world into an expanse of darkness stretching infinitely in all directions. Yet this darkness was not empty. It was alive, shifting, almost watching me. Then, in the distance, I saw it. A radiant light unlike anything I had ever seen before. It wasn't just bright, it was alive, pulsing with an energy so intense, so powerful, that I couldn't look away. And then I heard it, a melody so beautiful, so profound, that human words fail to describe it. It wasn't just music, it was a message, a revelation, as if the very essence of the universe was being woven into sound. I could feel it speaking to my soul, revealing truths far beyond my comprehension. In that moment, I knew I was in the presence of something far greater than myself. This was no illusion, no hallucination caused by a dying brain. This was real, more real than anything I had ever experienced in my physical life. For the first time, I understood that God wasn't just an abstract concept or a creation of human imagination. He was real, he was infinite, and he was right there before me. But just as I began to feel an overwhelming sense of love and belonging, something changed. The warmth of the light turned into something else, something I had not expected. Suddenly, I felt completely exposed, as if every hidden thought, every action, and every motive of my heart was being laid bare. This light was not just love, it was judgment. And as I stood in its presence, every mistake, every selfish decision, every time I had rejected the truth, flashed before my eyes in perfect detail. There was no way to deny it, no way to justify or explain myself. I had spent my life mocking and rejecting the very being now standing before me, and in that moment I realized I was in serious trouble. Suddenly I felt myself descending and found myself standing before a being, one whom I knew instantly, without a doubt, was Jesus Christ. He didn't need to introduce himself. There was no question in my mind. I simply knew. The moment I met his gaze, something inside me shattered. It was as if his eyes saw straight through me, piercing into the deepest parts of my soul. Under his gaze, I saw myself for who I truly was. Not the person I had convinced myself I was, but the reality of who I had been. Arrogant, selfish, sinful. Then Jesus showed me something that left me speechless. I saw every moment he had tried to save me. Times when he had reached out, when I had been spared from accidents that should have taken my life, when people of faith had come to me, urging me to repent. I had ignored them all. Every chance, every sign, every warning, dismissed. Then he looked at me and spoke. "You cannot enter heaven, for if you were allowed in, you would defile it. But now you will see a land that no one wishes to remember, yet none can forget. When you feel overwhelmed, call upon my name and my title. Whether you return to earth or not, that has yet to be decided." The moment he finished speaking, a force stronger than anything I had ever felt grabbed hold of me and threw me backward toward a massive doorway. The door rolled up like a scroll, and before I could react, I was pulled into utter, suffocating darkness. I was falling, not floating, not drifting, falling violently, spiraling downward into something beyond comprehension. The air around me was thick, hot, and heavy, like I had been swallowed by a furnace. A deafening roar filled my ears, a mixture of screams, wails, and disturbing guttural voices speaking in languages I had never heard before. It wasn't just chaotic noise, it was torment, a symphony of suffering that never ended. The deeper I fell, the more intense it became. It was as if every sound carried the weight of eternal agony, a pain that could never be silenced. And then the stench hit me. It was overwhelming, a nauseating combination of rotting flesh, sulfur, and decay, so intense that I felt like I was suffocating. Every breath I took was filled with it, making my stomach churn, my throat burn. It was as if the very air in this place had been poisoned with death itself. I gasped, trying to clear my lungs, but there was no relief. just the heavy, sickening realization that this was what eternity smelled like here. I kept falling, faster and faster, unable to stop myself, unable to grasp onto anything. My surroundings were shifting, changing, like an endless vortex of dark clouds and flickering flames, but none of it made sense. There was no up or down, no sense of direction. It was as if I was being dragged into a place that existed outside of time and space. And then I hit the ground. The impact was brutal, knocking the air from my lungs, but the pain didn't stop there. The ground beneath me wasn't solid, it was jagged, burning, alive. It seared into my flesh and I scrambled to get up, but the very earth seemed to cling to me, almost like it wanted to consume me whole. My hands sank slightly into the surface, and a horrifying realization hit me. This ground was made of something living, something suffering. It was like I had landed on a sea of writhing, tortured souls, their forms compressed into an unrecognizable mass beneath my feet. And they were screaming. I forced myself to my feet, my entire body trembling as I took in my surroundings. Before me stretched a vast, desolate landscape, dry, cracked, and unbearably hot, as if the ground had been scorched by fire for eternity. The sky above was a sickly, dark red, pulsing as though it were alive, filled with swirling black smoke that moved like a living thing. Jagged mountains loomed in the distance, their peaks stretching into an endless void, and in the farthest reaches of my vision, I saw rivers of fire, twisting and churning like liquid lava, stretching as far as the eye could see. But the most unsettling part? The silence between the screams. It wasn't just emptiness. It was a feeling of hopelessness so deep that it pressed against me like a physical force. And then I saw it. A structure stood in the distance, a decaying house, barely holding itself together, its walls sagging, its roof caving in. It looked out of place, like a relic from the physical world trapped in a nightmare. Something about it felt familiar, but I couldn't place why. My feet moved toward it before my mind could process what I was doing, and then they appeared. Figures began emerging from the house, people I once knew. Their faces were warm, familiar, their voices soft and welcoming. They smiled as they approached me, their expressions eerily reassuring, as if they were greeting an old friend. For a split second, I wanted to believe them. I wanted to believe that I had somehow found a place of refuge in this hellish wasteland. But everything about this place felt wrong. The ground beneath me pulsed, the sky above me whispered, and the air itself thickened around me, suffocating me with a weight I couldn't see but could feel pressing down on my soul. Then I looked into their eyes, and their eyes changed. The moment I locked eyes with them, their pupils elongated, turning yellow and slit-like, just like a reptile's. And in that instant their entire forms shifted, their faces contorted, their smiles twisted into something unnatural, and in a flash, the illusion shattered. The people I thought I knew were no longer human. Their skin became grey and leathery, their limbs elongated and sharp, their teeth jagged and dripping with saliva. They let out a guttural growl, their bodies convulsing and twitching as if they had been waiting for this moment. And then they lunged at me. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in terror. Their claws swiped at me, their teeth snapped inches from my face. They moved with unnatural speed, circling me like predators playing with their prey. Their screams were deafening, filled with a rage and hunger that made my very soul tremble. The air itself seemed to tighten around me, suffocating, pressing down like an invisible force that wanted to crush me into nothingness. The overwhelming realization hit me. I was in hell. And then I remembered. The words Jesus had spoken to me before I was cast into this place. When you feel overwhelmed, call upon my name and my title. In that moment, I had no other choice. I opened my mouth and screamed with everything I had. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. The reaction was instantaneous. The creatures froze in place, their bodies jerking as if struck by an unseen force. Their snarls turned into screeches of pain, their forms twisting and writhing in agony. They clawed at their own faces, their yellow eyes filled with something I never thought I'd see in them: fear. They could torment me, they could terrorize me, but they could not touch me. Because the name of Jesus had power, even in this place, even in the depths of hell. The creatures began to back away, their faces contorted in rage and frustration. They wanted to tear me apart, but they couldn't. They wanted to drag me further into the depths of this nightmare, but something was holding them back, something greater than them. The very ground beneath me trembled. The air pulsed, and I realized this place was reacting to the name of Jesus. It wasn't just the creatures that feared him. This entire realm did. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if I would be trapped here forever. But in that moment, one thing became abundantly clear. Jesus was the only way out. A creature led me through this forsaken place. It wasn't human. Nothing in this realm was. It stood at about 1.4 meters tall, with rough reptilian skin that looked like it had been scorched and hardened over centuries. Its breath was so foul, so rancid, that waves of heat rippled out from its mouth, distorting the air like a mirage on scorching pavement. I could barely stand the smell, but I had no choice but to follow. In my mind, I named it lizard breath. Without speaking, the creature reached out with its gnarled, clawed fingers and tore open the very fabric of the air. It was as if reality itself was just a veil, and it was peeling it back to reveal something much worse beyond. It motioned for me to step through. I hesitated, but then I realized I had no control here. I was not in charge. I was nothing in this place. So I stepped forward. The moment I crossed the threshold, I found myself on a dusty, barren road, the air thick with smoke and ash. Surrounding me were countless towering structures, stacked one on top of another like prison cells, stretching endlessly in every direction. These were not buildings, they were confinements, holding cells of suffering, cages of torment. The sky above swirled with dark, churning vortexes, massive tornado-like spirals that seemed to reach down, sucking people into the air before violently dropping them into these cells. Others were dragged, kicking and screaming, by grotesque demonic entities, pulled toward their fate, thrown into their own personal prisons of suffering. I peered into one of the cells. Inside, I saw a man tormented without end. He had been a man who, in life, took pleasure in mocking and humiliating others, belittling them, making them feel worthless, feeding off their pain for his own amusement. Now he was the one being mocked. Surrounding him were twisted, nightmarish creatures, their mouths stretching unnaturally wide as they hurled insults and cruel laughter, every word cut deep, each taunt digging into his very being, shredding away any sense of self-worth he had left. But no matter how much he screamed, no matter how much he begged for it to stop, it never did. I moved to another cell. Inside, I saw a former pastor, a man who once stood at the pulpit, preaching righteousness, yet behind closed doors he abused his position, using his authority to manipulate and seduce women. Now he was trapped, his body engulfed in a never-ending fire of desire, a burning that he could never satisfy. His cravings consumed him, but there was no relief. He clawed at himself, writhed in agony, yet the more he suffered, the more the fire grew. The very thing he had fed in life had become his torment in death, an eternal hunger that could never be fulfilled. And then I saw something different, a section unlike the others. It radiated a deeper, darker presence. I could feel the sheer weight of evil pressing against me as I walked toward it. It was a place for the worst of the worst. I stepped toward one particular chamber, and my breath caught in my throat. It looked like a crematorium, a gas chamber straight out of Auschwitz, The walls were charred black, the air thick with the stench of burning flesh, the faint sound of gasping, panicked breaths filling the space. And inside was Adolf Hitler. His punishment was far beyond anything I had seen. I watched as he relived over and over again every moment of horror his victims had suffered, not as a spectator, but as them. He felt their pain, their terror, their final moments. He felt the brutal separation from their families, the dehumanizing cruelty, the suffocating panic as the gas filled their lungs. But here's what shocked me most. It didn't change him. He wasn't remorseful, he wasn't repentant. If anything, he had become even more twisted. His hatred had not diminished, it had intensified. His rage and malice had not been stripped away, it had grown stronger. His very essence was being consumed by the same evil he had unleashed upon the world. And in that moment, I understood something I had never grasped before. Hell wasn't just about punishment. It was the full realization of who you had chosen to become. These souls weren't just suffering, they were becoming the very worst versions of themselves, eternally spiraling deeper and deeper into the consequences of their own corruption. There was no redemption here. There was no second chance. Only the inescapable, undeniable reality that they had made their choice, and now that choice would consume them forever. As I stood there, overwhelmed by the sheer horror of everything I had seen, I felt something inside me begin to break. The torment, the suffering, the endless agony. I knew I couldn't take it any longer. I could feel the weight of eternity pressing down on me, the terrifying realization that this was not a dream, not an illusion, this was real. And if I didn't do something, I would never escape. And then I remembered. Jesus had told me what to do. I took a deep breath, or at least I tried to, and with everything I had left, I screamed his name. Jesus! 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 Instantly, everything shifted. I felt a powerful force grab me, pulling me upward, yanking me away from the nightmare that had swallowed me whole. The creatures, the cells, the endless suffering. It all began to fade into the distance as I was lifted out of the pit. The howls of rage and torment grew fainter, as if something was pulling me back to where I was meant to be. And then I woke up. I gasped for air, my lungs burning as if I had been drowning. I was no longer in hell, I was back in my body. My eyes flew open, my chest heaving, sweat pouring down my face. My whole body trembled as I struggled to process what had just happened. The room around me was spinning, the sounds of the world returning like a distant echo. I had returned. Later, I would learn that my neighbor had found me unconscious and rushed me to the hospital. The doctors diagnosed me with cholera, a disease that had nearly shut my body down completely. They weren't sure if I would survive, but somehow, against all odds, I did. But even though my body had been healed, my mind was not. The memories of hell wouldn't leave me alone. The images haunted me. The sounds followed me into my sleep. The stench of burning flesh, the twisted laughter, the endless torment. It all played in my mind, over and over again, like a nightmarish film I couldn't turn off. I had survived, but I wasn't free. I was terrified. I was afraid to sleep, afraid to close my eyes, afraid that if I did, I might end up back there again. I had seen too much, and no matter how hard I tried to convince myself that it had been just a dream, just a hallucination, just a near-death experience, I knew the truth. I had been to hell, and I never wanted to go back. One evening, after yet another sleepless night, I reached my breaking point. I sat alone in my apartment, slumped into my old beanbag chair, staring blankly at the wall. I had nowhere left to run. I had tried to ignore it, tried to push it away, but the fear never left me. I couldn't do this on my own. So, in a voice barely louder than a whisper, I spoke the only words that I had left in me. "Jesus, I never want to go back there. Please save me. I belong to you." The moment the words left my mouth, something incredible happened. A cold wind swept through the room. It wasn't just a slight breeze, it was a powerful, refreshing presence that wrapped around me like a blanket. My entire body shivered, but not from fear, from relief. I looked over at the thermostat. The outside temperature was 94 degrees, and yet my apartment felt cool, peaceful, completely untouched by the summer heat. And in that moment, I knew I had been reborn. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid anymore. The memories were still there, but they didn't own me. The fear no longer controlled me. Something had changed inside me, something eternal. I had been given a second chance, and this time, I wouldn't waste it. Even though I had been saved, the memories of hell never left me. No matter how hard I tried to move on, the horror of what I had seen haunted my mind. I couldn't escape the images, the sounds, the overwhelming terror of that place. I lived in fear, afraid that if I slipped up, if I failed in any way, I would end up back there again. I tried everything to hold on to my salvation. I did good deeds, I prayed constantly, I lived as righteously as I could, hoping that it would be enough to keep me from ever going back. But no matter what I did, I always felt uneasy, always worried that one mistake, one failure would send me back into the darkness. I didn't understand grace. I didn't understand what Jesus had truly done for me. Then one day, Jesus opened my eyes to see heaven. I don't know if I was taken up in my physical body or if it was just my soul, but what I experienced healed something deep inside me. The fear, the doubt, the anxiety that had followed me since my return from hell, all of it melted away in an instant. I found myself standing in a vast, open field, stretching endlessly in every direction. But this wasn't just any field, it was alive. The grass shimmered with light, swaying gently, as if responding to a song I couldn't hear but could somehow feel. The sky above was the most vibrant shade of blue I had ever seen, and the air was filled with a peace so pure that I could feel it settle deep in my soul. There was something different about the air here. It wasn't just oxygen, it was life itself. I breathed in deeply, and for the first time I felt completely whole, completely new, completely at peace. It was as if every wound, every burden, every weight I had ever carried simply didn't exist anymore. And then I saw the people. Everywhere I looked, people were reuniting with their loved ones, embracing, laughing, crying tears of joy. It was unlike anything I had ever seen on earth. There was no sorrow, no sadness, only pure love and restoration. It was as if every broken relationship, every separation, every painful goodbye had been erased, replaced by the joy of being together again, forever. I saw a mother who had once been broken with grief because she had aborted her child. She had carried guilt and pain for years, believing that she had lost her baby forever. She had lived her whole life thinking God would never forgive her, that she would have to bear the weight of that decision for all eternity. And then she saw him. A young boy radiant with joy came running toward her, his little arms stretched wide. The mother fell to her knees, sobbing, but before she could even speak, the child wrapped his arms around her and whispered, "Hi, Mummy. We have all of eternity together now. Don't cry anymore." The moment he spoke, her tears dried instantly. In their place, a joy unlike anything I had ever seen flooded her face. Every ounce of shame, every burden of regret, gone, replaced by pure, overwhelming peace. I saw a father reunited with a son he had lost too soon. I saw brothers and sisters embracing after years of separation. I saw grandparents meeting grandchildren they had never known on earth. and with every reunion the same thing happened. The pain of the past disappeared, replaced by perfect love and healing. Here, in this place, there was no more pain, no more sorrow, no more regret. There was only redemption, only love, only peace. In heaven, no one was judged by their past. No one carried the weight of their mistakes. Every single person here had been fully accepted, fully loved, fully restored, not because of what they had done, but because of what Jesus had done for them. And at that moment, I understood something that changed me forever. I had spent so much time trying to earn my place in heaven, afraid that if I didn't do enough, I would lose my salvation. But now I saw the truth. Salvation was never about what I could do. It was about what Jesus had already done. I saw him then, Jesus. He stood in the distance, his presence radiating unimaginable love. And when our eyes met, I finally understood. He had paid the price. He had carried my sins. He had suffered in my place. And heaven wasn't a reward for the righteous. It was a gift for the redeemed. I didn't need to fight for it. I didn't need to strive for it. It had already been given to me, freely, through the love and sacrifice of Jesus Christ. When I returned to earth, I was a different person. The fear that had once controlled me was gone. I no longer lived in anxiety, trying to be good enough for God. I finally understood that my place in heaven was not something I had to fight for. It was something Jesus had already secured for me. I didn't have to strive anymore. I didn't have to be afraid anymore. Because salvation wasn't something I could earn. It was a free gift, given in love, paid for by Jesus Christ himself. I had been given a second chance, and now I had a purpose: to share this truth with everyone who would listen.